All right. Hello, everybody who is a square and couldn't come to my after hours in person. I am about to demonstrate the way that I added Auth0 to an old React project. I was just telling the people in after hours that I have a repo available on GitHub right here that you can fork and clone if you want to follow along. So this is the repo. So what we're going to do is I made this README for this repo, and we're kind of just going to follow along with this. So basically what I did earlier today was I went through and I tried to get it to work on my own, and these are the steps that I followed. So I'm going to go through those again with all of you lovely people. So the very first thing to do is you actually have to go to Auth0 and sign up for an account. So everyone, you can sign in with your GitHub, which is what I did. So it's very easy. So let's see, click sign up with GitHub or Google or whatever you want to, whatever you feel comfortable signing up with. Okay, so it'll pop this screen up for you, and then the thing that you want to do is you want to click on new application. Okay, so that's the next step in our README. You click new application, you name your application. I think the one I went through before was Smurfs, so I'm going to do Smurfs 2, and you're going to click single page web application. If you guys are following along and I'm going too fast, let me know. So you click single page web application and then click create. And it does these things. So basically what it's doing now is it creates this single page application, and then it has this specific stuff on its settings that you're going to need later. So keep this window open, don't move away from it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go down and we're going to click React, and it's going to take us to the quick start screen for React. Okay. So hold on just a second. I'm making sure I'm not missing anything. All right, so everyone's at this screen? Akshay, were you able to follow along? I know you kind of dipped out for a second.
Yeah, I have like bad connectivity right now, so I got disconnected, but I'll catch up. You guys keep going.
Sure. Oh, and Anthony's here. Hey, Anthony, did you just join us?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Sorry,
if you look in the after hours channel, I dropped a link to the repo that we're working in if you want to fork and clone it, or you can just watch
Gotcha.
along.
Right on.
It's got to read me with the steps. So far, all we've done is created an Auth0 account, and now we have created a new app for our Auth0 account. And so we have these settings, right? And
Gotcha.
So one of the things that we have to do, so the first thing is sign up for an account, create a new application, choose React, open the application settings, and we want to add our callback URL. Basically what that means is inside of our settings, what's going to happen is inside of our app, we are going to basically click away kind of and say, hey, we want you to authorize. And if they do actually get through the authorization process, we want you to send them back to this website. So what you need to do down in allowed callbacks is you actually need to add right now I'm just doing localhost because I don't have my my app hosted anywhere. I'm just doing localhost 3000. http:// localhost 3000. Okay, / at the end. Go all the way down to the bottom and click Save Changes. Okay, so that was this step. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're actually finally going to go into our repo. So we're inside of our repo. If you've just forked and cloned it, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to do yarn install just to get back to the package.sh get all the package.json stuff. Mine's already yarn installed from earlier in the day, but I'm going to go through that step anyway, just to double check that everything's fine. Yes, excellent. Oh, no, I messed it up because I am in the already solved branch. Just kidding, everyone ignore me. Excellent work, all of you ignore me. Okay, we're going to do that again because I reset it for the demo. So we're doing a yarn install. Okay, that makes more sense. I was like, surely something has to be installed. Okay, so this is my this is my Redux Smurf project. So we have a server in the outer directory, and then the actual React app is here inside of Smurfs, okay? So while this is installing, I'll just kind of walk you through, this is just the normal server that was in the assignment. This is a pretty standard Redux application. You have your index. What I didn't realize until after I had chosen this project and gotten most of the way through is that I had not used React Router on this project. So it gets a little bit hacky at the end, but it's very easy to apply the same logic to a project that has React Router in it. I just didn't have one available, and I didn't want to make a whole project. I wanted to focus on just the Auth0 stuff. Okay, so we've yarn installed both of these, but we've only yarn installed the things that were already existing in the project. Now what we need to do is we need to work on adding the things that we want to add for our authentication stuff. So right now, what we're going to be working in purely is going to be I might have messed this up. I did. I forgot to cd into my inner React folder. Now we have to wait for it to finish installing. But basically, what we're going to be doing is I'm only adding Auth0 to my React app. I don't care about the outer directory. So from this point forward, I'm working inside of my Smurfs folder, okay?
Okay.
So, waiting for this to load, la-di-la-di-la, everything is fine. Take your time, computer, it's cool.
Mine certainly is.
All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come into my server. I just wanna show you what it looks like at the beginning. You get to see my horrible styling from before. I opened it and I was like, oh, my eyes. Okay, so I'm gonna yarn start my outer server, which is on port 3333, and I'm gonna yarn start my create React app, or my React app itself, and wait for it to pop up wherever it decides it wants to be.
Which one of those do you use as a callback URL?
I used the React app itself, because what I'm doing is I'm adding authorization or authentication rather to the front end. So I chose 3000, which is the port that my React app is running on. So hopefully it works. I wonder if Zoom is also slowing down my computer. I say that, but I know Zoom is slowing down my computer. So this is my React app that I made before. It's just the normal, I can post things to things thing, and then it reloads, and you've got like, oh look, it's Bob, he's smart, etc. And it's got all the colors. So this is the React app that we're going to be working with for now. So we're going to go back to our README, and it says that the first thing we need to do is we need to, I'm going to stop my React app. We need to yarn add a couple of packages. We need to yarn add auth0 JS. So do that. And it's going to take a while because it's kind of a big package. How's everyone's day going?
Yeah, just making sure this is in the Auth0 root directory, right? That you're running this?
Right now we're in Smurfs. So Auth0
you're in Smurfs. Okay.
Right. Yeah, from now on we're mostly going to be working inside of the Smurfs folder because I'm only concerned about that React app.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so after we add the Auth0, after we do yarn add Auth0, what we're going to do is we're going to copy this script, and we're actually going to go into our, I wish I had more. I have 3 monitors, but you guys can only see one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, and I'm going to go into my public folder. I'm going to go into index.html. I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'm going to paste my script here. Okay. Further down, so I was typing these up and the steps that I was going through as I was going through different documentation and things like that. Further down, there's another script you have to paste in. I'm just going to go ahead and do that right now so that I don't have to come back into this file. So I'm going to paste those both. I'm going to save them, and that's the last thing I need to do in my index.html, so I'm going to close that. Okay, the next step is on our front-end app, I'm also going to yarn add something called Auth0 locked. And then after this, or while this is loading, I'm going to take you guys into the documentation and these resources and talk about my thought process when I was going through the doc, because I've never used this before. I just went into the documentation today and was like, hey, I'm going to poke around and see what I can get to work, right? So so basically this is the way that my brain decided, okay, we're going to do this. So I was looking at the quick start guide and I said, all right, let me quick start. I like the sound of that because of the quick part. Hopefully it would be easy. So I picked React as my technology, and so I was kind of reading through here. A lot of it was a little confusing, I'm not going to lie. So I was looking up here and it says, let's see, you need the following information. I figure, okay, I need that information from settings, but I don't need it immediately because I don't know what to do with it. So I'm just going to keep scrolling back. I read the configure callback options. I was like, okay, that makes a reasonable amount of sense. I need it to call back the site I want it to have access to. That's fine. I'll add that callback in. I also saw here that it was specifically using a local host callback as an example. So I said, all right, cool. I'm going to try that. I'm going to just do the local host as my own app. That works. Okay, so this is the installing Auth thing that we just did. These are the script pasting that we did. Moving on, it's talking about authentication with tokens, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's great. I know I'm going to need tokens at some point. So basically at this point, I'm just skimming the documentation to try to get a good overall view of how this is all going to go. So it wants me to create an authentication service to manage this. So I'm kind of looking at the code. I'm not going to lie, I don't have like a deep understanding of what's going on yet, right? I'm just kind of reading the documentation and thinking about it. So I go down, handle authentication tokens. I feel like I stumbled across something and then clicked it and was like, oh, this is a great idea. Maybe I already missed it. I probably already did. Okay. Let me see. What did I miss? Okay. You can get these details from application settings. Integrate Auth0 into your app. Oh, here it is. Okay. Here's the sentence that I liked the most. Universal login is the easiest way to set up authentication in your application. So I said, all right, you are speaking my language. And so I opened the next documentation, which is universal login, which is a whole other page of stuff. So it goes on to say, okay, universal login is the most secure way. Filters are on your login page, customizable login type thing. Moving on. By default, the login page internally uses Auth0's lock widget to authenticate your users, but you can customize it if you want. So it's talking about why you should use it, but the thing that got my attention the most was that there's a lock widget. So there's when I hear the word widget, I think, okay, this is some sort of pre-configured thing that I can just probably, hopefully, drop in and it'll work the way it's supposed to. So I click to my next documentation link, which all of these resources are here, universal login and then lock, right? So now I'm on lock. And so I decided, okay, I want to try to see if I can use this lock and see if it works. So that's why the next steps have happened. You have to install lock and then paste that script from step 8, your index.html, and then we'll move on to the next thing. So it becomes apparent that we have this client ID and this domain ID and our quick setting or our application settings that we need somewhere. But the thing about those really specific codes that are associated with things. Luis talked a little bit about it today, but you don't want to put those things that are specific to your application or they should be kept secure. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a .env inside of our project to store that and reference them instead of just having them be able to be pushed up to GitHub. So if you followed along with him earlier today, you can do that or follow along now. So what you're going to do is you're going to do yarn add.env, and it will go and do its thing. Once again, we're working inside of Smurfs. We're not working inside of our root folder. Okay, so now basically what I'm saying is inside of Smurfs, I have this .env configuration thing. What I want to do is I want to add my actual .env folder, and inside of this .env folder, I want to add client ID, and I want it to be equal to the client ID. Oh, that was not what I wanted to do.
It feels like we're at capacity.
Sorry. That was that hiring partners video that I keep meaning to go back and watch and have yet to do. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this client ID, we're going to paste it, and then we also want to do, I believe it's called domain URL. I'll fix that later if it's not, I can't recall, which is just here. Okay. So this is what a .env file looks like. It's just a plain text file. You're just saying, this is the variable, this is what I want it equal to. However, when I first tried to do this, it would not work. I couldn't get my, I'll give you an example to show you what I was looking at just so you can see how I fixed it. But I'm not super comfortable using .env files. I've done it before, but I hadn't done it in a while. So I was like, okay, I just need to figure out if it's working. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to go into my, into a folder that would use it. And I wanted to just console log my process.env, which is how you access anything inside your .env, right? So I was like, all right, I just want to make sure I'm getting what I'm expecting. I want to see if my client ID is there, and I want to see if my domain URL is there. And if they're not, I need to fix something, right? So I did this. In order to use the .env package that we did earlier, you also have to do this quick require .env .config. And what that does is it just maps your .env file to your, actually I think it needs to be on index.js. I don't know if it matters, but all right, we can test it both ways just to be sure. Okay, so what I'm expecting then is when this website launches and I look at my console, I'm expecting to see process.env print out, and I'm expecting it to have client ID and the domain URL. That's what I'm expecting, but I already know how this story ends, and it's badly because I had this problem earlier. So I went to inspect. I'm just kind of trying to show you how my brain works when I'm trying to do something new. If it's not helpful to you, let me know and I will stop talking so much. But I find it useful to try to like figure out like the thought processes, especially when you run into problems. So I was logging what I was getting from my .env, and this is what I was seeing, right? There's no client ID, there's no anything. Eventually, I took to the internet and I started searching around, and I ended up finding this this issue here somebody made. I found like a Stack Overflow answer or something that led to this this portion of the documentation for Create React App. And what it's saying is, inside of a React app, you can add custom environment variables, but by default, you only have node _env, and then any other environment variables that start with this specific prefix. So I was like, oh man, that would be so great if this is the only thing that was wrong, and that would fix it. What it did was I came in and was like, all right, I'm just going to try it. I'm going to take a chance. It's going to go into my .env, and I'm just going to add React underscore app underscore to this, and then cross my fingers. If you do change your environment file, you have to actually restart your whole server because it loads it up when it's built. It doesn't refresh like it does for some style things and things like that. Okay, so I restarted my React app and crossing my fingers, and I'm still crossing my fingers because it still might not work. It worked earlier today, but that's no guarantee future working. Okay, so I came in to inspect. I'm looking. I want to see that my process is printing out what I want. And they're there. Yes. Okay. So that fixed my problem. That only took like an hour of me. Like I just did it in 30 seconds. That took a long time. So, okay.
Well done.
Thanks. Oh, the claps for me. Yeah. I was like, why isn't this showing up? And I was sure I was doing the .env configuration wrong somehow. And yeah, anyway, I digress. So we have these things available to us now, and we can move on in our README. So let's see. We stored those in our client ID and domain ID file. Now what we want to do is inside of app.js, we're going to start doing some things involving auth0 and auth. Essentially what we're going to do first is we are going to actually create our lock object. So this is just what I took out of the documentation. Like down here, yes. So you'll notice that I've already put my React App Client ID, and then this is actually, I'm going to replace this with my process.env. I decided at the end to make the URL a .env variable instead of just typing it out. So I still feel pretty good about this. I think it's that's what I called it. Okay. So I'm going to save that. If it tries to run it, though, it's going to get mad at me because it's going to say auth0 lock is undefined, and it's because I haven't imported it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here. I'm going to import auth0 lock from auth0 lock, save. Okay, so that should fix that issue. Fingers crossed. Hey, do your job. Hey, refresh and stuff. Okay. Why are you so mad? Did I not install Auth0? Oh, probably because I spelled it wrong and I'm silly.
I was just trying to read it, but it's so hard to read that color.
Do
It's
you
up
want me
there.
to change the colors? Or
Well,
make it
only when it's highlighted. When you're hovering over it,
oh,
it makes it harder to read.
I can actually make it bigger too if you'd like. That's the thing I probably should have asked at the beginning.
I mean, I think it's good. I think that was the only issue we're going to have. I was just trying to, that's the first thing I thought too, is maybe you had a misspelling in there, but I couldn't really read it that well.
Yeah, no, the size I think is fine. It's just that just remember to take the hover over out when you're talking about it.
Will do. Okay. Okay, so we did that part, and then they had this. I need to take this out actually of the README because I ended up not using that. I ended up doing something else. So ignore. Gotta be flexible. All right. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna skip ahead. We're going to go and add a login button now. So right now, the way my app is configured, there's no button or anything. There's no way to actually say that I need to log in. So all that I did was I just came and I made a quick little div that says on click is equal to, I need to change that in the README as well to look at. Essentially what they were trying to do is they were just trying to manipulate the DOM, but when I make my button, I'm just going to actually put the function in here directly. So the lock object has a feature where you can call lock.show and it brings up the widget. And I'm going to go demonstrate that for you because it's amazing. It just works. And I was like, this is so great. It was a great moment when that happened. It helped me to change the README. Oh, I didn't have anything inside of my button to say click here. This is one of the reasons it's very ugly as well. Let me go adjust the README and just paste this into it for people who follow along later, or for you guys when you follow along later, if that's what you'd like to do.
Yeah, that's what I'm planning on doing. I was going to try to keep up with you, but my computer's installing stuff slow, and
Yeah.
I just figured I'd watch it, and then I noticed you did have the recording on, so.
I do have the recording on. I'm glad. I would be so embarrassed if I told everyone that I was recording like 7 times and then I didn't record. And it doesn't sound like that crazy out of the realm of possibilities for me, but all right. So if I come in and click login, ta-da! Look at this. It just pops up. It's so beautiful. So right now I can click login with Google, and it allows me to, do some things. Look, I'm authorizing stuff. This is great. But it doesn't, so far right now, it does not change the functionality of my app at all. I don't have anything protected based on whether or not I'm logged in. I just had the ability to log in, and we don't really see anything changing in the front or in the back, right? Because we haven't made it so. So now, the next step is to add WebAuth to deal with the tokens. So this was locked. This was the widget that'll pop up and allow, so instead of coding the forms all by ourselves and dealing with all of those methods and things, I have outsourced that to what they recommended, which was their lock widget. They said it's more secure than doing it your own way because it's more resilient against man-in-the-middle attacks and things like that, and that sounds good to me. So now I need to figure out, okay, when a user logs in, what different things do they see versus when they're not logged in, and how am I handling those tokens and that sort of thing. So I will show you what I did. Whew. After it loads. I think that I took stuff from here somewhere, anytime. Where did I get this? Maybe I got it from the middle. Huh. Fascinating. I mean, one of the things about using new tech is you kind of just have to play around with it until it works, right? So hope for the best. Keep plugging different things in until something happens. I don't think it was this. I think it was actually inside of Universal Login. I thought I had posted everything that I needed inside of that, but I did not get step 13. So, so here's the lock stuff. Where did I see that? Fascinating. Okay, now I'm just really confused because I didn't make it up. I'm not quite that clever. Let's see. So here they've already pre-filled out things for me. I thought it was in one of these handles. Handle authentication. It wasn't that one though, and I wasn't using sessions. I fixed with that. Maybe it was this. I'm sorry, now I'm just muttering to myself quietly. Hold on a second. I remember seeing something saying WebAuth and not using lock specifically. It was in an example portion. I remember thinking, huh, how interesting. Let me, so here they're creating lock and doing the authorization parameters. It's not in.
You want to try a find kind of thing, like if you're on a PC, Control F?
Don't remember exactly what it was called. I think it was WebAuth, but that's a good idea. Let's see. So like they have this, but I don't think that that was it. So it looks different when I got it to work. I feel like it was on this page, but my feelings also don't matter. So, okay, I must have clicked somewhere else. I'm going to look and see what I did in my solution branch. Hold on a second. That's why I did this beforehand. Yeah, all right. We're going to go into app. It was this. So, because I didn't see this anywhere. Anyway, so let me add this to the README. And I'm not saying that this is the only way to do it. I'm just saying the reason I want to do it this way is I know that it works because I did it earlier. I'm sure that I could do it those other ways and it would work just as well. But essentially what we're going to do is we are going to, also thank you for your patience, guys. We are going to create underneath our lock, we're going to create this WebAuth object. And in order to do this, we actually also need to import Auth0 from Auth0.js. So we'll save that. That should still allow us to compile and run. Fingers crossed that everything works. Oh, what are you mad about? Domain option is required. Oh, see, I did call it the wrong thing. I called it domain URL instead of domain. I couldn't remember exactly what I called it in my things. Okay, so now we have this WebAuth object. And what we are going to do with it is we are actually going to parse out our authentication results. So after we log in with the widget that pops up, it sort of sends all of that information to this method right here. That should be in the README, but if it's not, let me go double check. Nope. I think at this point I was like elbow deep in documentation, and I was like, I lost track of my README. Okay, so this is a function that I took out of the documentation. In fact, let me see if I can find where. Yeah, sure, whatever. Let me just do webauth.parse and see if might have been in an older reference. That I clicked around on or something. It wasn't this far in. There's so much documentation. I think that that's part of the thing that I have a hard time with, is that there's just so many different ways you can do it, and it's so configurable that it's just overwhelming, right? So I'm just showing you guys one way to do it, but there's any number of ways that you can do it. Anyway, so this is a method for parsing the the auth result that we get back. So it will receive an error in the event that the authentication does not go through, or it'll receive this auth result object. And so here what we're doing is we're taking different things off of the auth result object, and in fact, what I would like to do is I would actually like to, I want to console log that auth result object and see all of the things that are available to us. I didn't do that earlier today, but I'm very curious about what sort of information it sends back to us. So, because I see the things that they're using, but I'm curious if there's anything else that we might want to try to use somewhere on our site or just for our own edification. Let's go see. Okay, so right now, also you'll notice basically what it's doing is saying, okay, if my authentication is successful, I get this object back. There's a couple of things on this object like an access token, and we're going to see other things that are on it because we're console logging it, but we've got these things. And now we're actually setting that access token. So you can kind of see how this is building up to a point where we can say, okay, yes, you can see the site, or no, you cannot see the site, right? So with that in mind, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to open my inspector so we can see what's going on in the console as it's happening. All right, I'm going to click login. I'm going to log in with my email. So now everyone has my email. Okay, so let's see, auth result. Here we go. Here's our auth result object. So I'm going to expand this and see all the different things that are on it. Okay. So we have an access token, we have an app state, all of these things are null, we have some sort of weird state ID, we have a token type, we have an expires in, an amount, so our token does expire, so we have all these things available to us, right? Inside of our actual method, you'll see basically what they do is they create a new variable for expires at, and then they just, they make it a specific time, right? So they're like, all right, this is when that would be expired. They're saying they're adding it to, they want to know the exact time that it actually expires, and then they're saving that on the local storage as well. And the reason for that is later I'm going to show you an authenticate method, and it will check to see if your token is expired. And if it is expired, they don't let you into the site. Okay. So also, if I go into my DevTools now, if I go into my application and look in this local storage, I can see both of those things. I can see when it expires, and I can see what the access token is. Okay. So let's see, back to our README, which should be at least sort of okay from now on. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to create an isAuthenticated function and use that expires at value that we talked about. Okay. So our isAuthenticated function is going to go actually inside of our component. Okay, so we know that we stored our expires at in milliseconds on our local storage. So for our isAuthenticated, we are just getting that off of our local storage, okay? And then what we're returning is we're returning a what time is it now versus when is it supposed to expire check. I believe if there is no token at all, this will still return a false. And that's why isAuthenticated will return either true or false depending on whether or not you have a valid token, okay? So we've created this isAuthenticated function. It's not very complicated. But now how do we use this? What do we do with the knowledge that our user is authenticated or not? Because I didn't have React Router installed or used in this project, I got a little bit creative. You can do it a different way. You can use middleware like you guys have, like you've been shown by Luis. Oh, sorry. You can also use Auth0 to protect APIs as well. From what I've seen from the documentation, I was doing client-side and front-end protection because that was the thing that I stumbled on first. and it was using React that you guys have been using. But I'll show you the approach that I took to protect the content. And what I did was I went into my render function and I said, okay, what I want to know is if this dot is authenticated. So basically, if my token is good, I want you to return my normal happy component. If it is not, I want you to return, let's see, let's do a div, let's do h1, you are not logged in. And then inside of this div, I'm also going to move my login button. We don't really need a login button if we are already authorized, right? So here I go. Okay, hopefully I didn't miss any. Why are you angry at me? If oh, I didn't close this. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to save that. My app will restart. Now we have a small problem. I can't really test it right now because I do have those tokens in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear my tokens out of my local storage. I'm going to refresh, and hopefully it'll show me an angry "you're not logged in" sign. And it does. So that's awesome, right? Okay, so now I'm going to click login. I'm going to try to log in with my Google account and cross my fingers that everything works. Maybe. And it does. So I think that I also like preceded my my data when I was working with this. So like I actually came into my server and added some Smurfs just so that something would show up. Doesn't really matter. I think I basically just copied pasted the same Smurf over and over again since I could not be bothered to do it better. So okay. So now, even if we refresh, it's going to know, hey, you're an authenticated user. That token exists for you, and you're doing a great job. You know. So that's how that protection works. But now we're logged in forever, and we can't ever not log in. Like we don't have any way to do a log out function. So what we're going to do is we're going to just do a simple, we're not doing the blacklist or the whitelist thing that Luis was talking about earlier. I'm just showing you how to remove it from the local storage, and just know that, of course, if you have a token, it will still exist out there somewhere, right? So what we're going to do is, in addition to this is authenticated function, we're also going to add a logout function. This is where it gets a little bit hacky. So basically, I'm going to my local storage and then removing those things that I added in. But because I'm not using React Router and I don't have any redirects and I haven't saved whether or not I'm authenticated on my state, which I could fix. I could add actions and reducers to say, okay, is this an authenticated user or not, and just have that change and then re-render my app. I just did it like the cheatery way because I was in a hurry, and so I'm just doing a window reload for now. After this, if you guys don't have any questions, we can try to make it more best practices, but I just wanted to see, okay, will this work? Like, is it actually deleting my tokens and things like that? So I added my logout function. I still need the logout button. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here, and instead of having this logout button, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do just log out, save it, more finger crossing, hoping for the best. Panicking. Oh, I messed it up. I did a bad thing. I need it up here. Oh, sleazy. Okay. Let's try it again. Hopefully it'll refresh and everything will be fine. All right, so we have this little log. It's not really a button, obviously, it's just words. So if we click on it, it refreshes our page and we're logged out. Ta-da! Woohoo! So super ugly, but it is functional. So now I will open the floor to questions. Does anyone have any questions about my amazing application that shows Smurfs and allows you to log out?
Well, I just want to say thank you very much for doing something like this so that we got to see it in action.
Was it at least moderately useful?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
I have a question. This is Cameron. Would this be your go-to authentication method, like overall method? You know,
To
like I don't know if you're like just a developer, right? Like
it depends on. So one of the things that I've used before is Firebase, which is another thing that does authentication, and it's actually a Google product, I believe, and they have a database associated with it as well. So it's very easy to like put apps on it. And they also do an authentication, like all-in-one, you drop it in and it works sort of thing, which is awesome. But I had never done Auth0 before today. So I feel like it's really well regarded and it is very customizable. Like you can make it look better. Like if you look at mine, obviously it's obviously Auth0, look at me, I've got like the Auth0 logo and it's only Google. Or you can sign up for like I think you can add in other third-party things, and in fact we should go and look and see what sort of configurations we can do. I guess the answer to your question is probably. I would probably use Auth0. I don't feel 100% comfortable with it. I do think they're very good at what they do.
you said, sorry, you would use what? Which one?
I would use this one.
This one, Auth0.
I would use
You're saying Auth0 or is it? Because I heard Auth0. Is it Auth0?
I would say Auth0, but it probably is Auth0. I don't know. That's a good
I think Zach said Auth0, but you say Auth0.
Yeah, let's see. How do you pronounce it?
It's a toss-up. Like, I don't know.
I feel like Auth0 sounds more like startup-y and techy, but
anyway, yeah, so you were saying, that's what I didn't understand what you said.
yeah. It's Auth0. I hate being wrong. But yeah, so you're right. It's Auth0.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. Like, so TechCrunch says so, and I believe them, so that's fine. But I would probably use that. What I'm curious about, so like here in the demo, they have a login with Twitter. I want to know, how can I get mine to do that? So that's like my next question. So right now, all you can do is log in with Google, which to my purpose is fine because I don't have a Facebook. But what if some of my people have Facebooks? I don't know. So I wonder if there's a setting or something that you can change to allow sort of thing. Well, that's interesting. You can actually do add-ons that will generate tokens for other authentication things like Firebase. And databases. How do I get other? That's an excellent question for the internet. Anyway, so that was an excellent question. I think I would probably use Auth0, but I definitely need more practice with it. Authentication is hard, and it's one of those parts of your, one of the biggest parts of your application that's a security risk, right? Because it involves people. So, does anyone else have a question?
Oh, wait, can I ask you another question then about, since you mentioned Facebook? like login, I think.
Mhm.
Is that still like super popular?
The Facebook login stuff.
I'll turn my video on. Yeah, like I had friends who were like building an app that turned into a company like a few years ago, and they were like, "Oh yeah, everybody uses Facebook login." Like, is that still true?
I feel like it's still true, but I hate it.
Like that is like anybody who's starting out, if you want to just like get up and running, it's like it's the best way to go. That's really fast.
I guess everyone has a Facebook. I am probably biased. I think a Google sign-in is much more effective. But
That's what I use.
yeah, but not everyone has a Google. I guess maybe more people have Facebook than Google.
Yeah. At the time, like, the people that expected to use it were, they knew they had there's like a 95% chance they had a Facebook, maybe 99% chance.
Multi-factor off. So you can do all sorts of.
Anyway, I didn't know if that had dropped in popularity from like Facebook's.
I don't know. I wonder if anyone does user data or surveys about that. Facebook logins versus Google third-party auth. What's the worst that could happen? All right. That's a security question. Interesting. I will say I still feel like it's pretty common, especially for new small applications that see pop up. You know what I mean? So I want Smurfs 2. I don't know. How can I go and add other ways to sign in? Also, I'm just sort of tooling around and mumbling to myself. Does anyone have any questions? Or does anyone want help with something that they're working on? Not the prettiest website, but it will do. I can't actually type this because I don't have a Facebook. Let's do auto login with GitHub. Let's see how we can do that. Wow.
Is it the level? I have a question. I've been kind of wondering about. Is it the level of which kind of like the browser is good on security and whatever, that when you're doing all the like third-party authentication and such, a big one in my mind a lot of times is, I'm not particularly in love with Facebook. I have one, and I'm kind of like, here, I don't necessarily want Facebook knowing, oh, this person has an account with this place sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I was curious when that interface is used, basically how much information Facebook can glean off of requests.
That's a really good question. I want to say probably a lot, just because I'm a little cynical about all of that. I mean, I feel like if there is an opportunity for Facebook to get your information, they're going to get it. This is not helpful. So I feel like it's just one of those things where it's really easy. So there are a couple of pain points when you have an app and new users are coming to it, right? Like nobody likes having to create a new user account for something, right? Coming up with a unique username that you're going to immediately forget because it has to have some sort of arbitrary number or symbol in it or whatever, and it's just for an app that you just found. I feel like they're reducing that initial pain point by making it easier on the user, and also they have less to keep track of as well, especially if they're using a different authentication program, right? So they're very well probably exchanging security for that convenience, and that's kind of the trade-off there. I'm having a hard time seeing like how Auth0 actually just links.
That's been my one kind of like curiosity about that, and then having to wonder about like here, depending on how well the browser's set up, it's kind of a kind of a similar thinking to where there's privacy settings in browsers talking about third-party website access to cookies and such, where where supposedly if the browser was built well, it can abide by your privacy settings, but otherwise, the idea that even exists, is talking about here. Websites are going and trying to examine what other like cookie information you have sitting, sitting locally from other different websites that you visited, not just theirs.
Yeah, one of my least favorite things is when I go somewhere else and they're trying to sell me something I already bought. Have you guys ever had that experience? Like you buy something somewhere online and then you go to a different website and they're like, here, buy this thing. And I'm like, you guys aren't even good at this. Like I already bought this. What's wrong with you?
It possibly is based off of that they've either through exchange of information or part of their coding is actually pulling up part of that other website.
I did hear about a new sort of like privacy-based browser. I haven't tried it yet, but it sounds interesting. That's supposed to prevent a lot of that stuff from, going anywhere.
It's kind of basically intentional cross-pollination kind of.
Well, I kind of feel like at this point, there's just like the amount of effort it takes to protect your privacy or security online is so gargantuan that in order to do it, you have to basically be a hermit in the woods, right? Like you can't, or you just have to spend so much of your own time worrying about it because, people have these huge lists of all this information about you and all of the IP addresses that are associated with you, and a lot of sophisticated ways to track you and your movements, and then they figure out what your mobile device is, and then they connect that to all, and I'm not even being paranoid, that's just what's happening, right? Like they just have all of this information about you. So you can start now and stop giving them to them. I kind of think it'd be really cool, and maybe someone is doing this already, but a disinformation campaign, where basically instead of having a browser or whatever that protects your information from going anywhere, it just sends them a bunch of misinformation so they can't target you very well, right? They don't know where you actually live, they don't know what you actually like to buy, that sort of thing. Like you just overwhelm them with lies, essentially. You never know what's true. I kind of think that's